Hi, my name is David P. Shapiro. I'm the owner and managing partner of the law office of David P. Shapiro, located in San Diego, California, where my firm helps good people regain control of their future when charged with a crime. In this video, I want to talk to you about the June 25th, 2021 sentencing of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin. Chauvin was sentenced by a state court judge after he was convicted for the murder, the second-degree murder of George Floyd. He was sentenced on June 25th to 22.5 years in prison. Now, what does that mean? Was it too light? Was it too harsh? Different people, you ask 4 people, you can get 5 different opinions on that. But let's really look at what that sentence means. And that's what I want to talk about in this video. The maximum Chauvin could have received was 40 years. He could have received anywhere from credit for time served, which, as ridiculous as it may seem, is what his defense team was asking for, all the way up to a maximum of 40 years. But what guided the judge? Well, what guided the judge is in Minnesota, unlike in California, there's like presumptive sentences, almost like sentencing guidelines on felony cases. In California, you have your lower term, your middle term, your upper term. Or if it's a second-degree murder case, it's 15 years to life. And then you're eligible for parole after you've served and have credits for 15 years. Well, Minnesota's a little different. Minnesota says, they come in around 12.5 years, 12, 13 years, as far as the pretty much the starting point for someone convicted of second-degree murder with no record. Now, the judge isn't married to that. They're not bound by that sentence. But then they go whether they look at aggravants or mitigants. Aggravants are bad things, mitigants are good things about the case, about the defendant. And what we know leading up to this sentencing was that the prosecution in Minnesota asked for 5 aggravating factors to be found. And of the 5, the only one that was not found to be true, to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt at the trial, was that George Floyd was, quote, particularly vulnerable. And the court relied on the fact that he was initially, resisting or delaying the officers from doing their duty before they had him on the ground and everything, unfortunately, that we saw transpire. But what the court did find is an aggravating factor to 4 things. Chauvin had a position of trust and authority, particularly cruelty in the way he treated George Floyd, ultimately resulting in his death. That there were children present. Obviously, we heard the testimony, we saw the testimony, we saw the video of one of the children that was there. And that the 4th, that the crime was committed as part of a group. So when the judge said, hey, for these 5, I think it was in May, I find to be true, well, I think anybody who knew what they were talking about was expecting a sentence probably around 20 years, give or take. I had gone on record and said I was thinking that it was anything less than low 20s would have been surprising because the judge made that finding of those 4 aggravating factors. So, there's a lot of misconceptions out there too about, well, what, 22.5 years, that's nothing, he'll be out in 6 minutes. Well, no. Minnesota law, as it's written, explains that you're going to do about 2/3 of that time. So it's expected that Chauvin's going to have to serve about 15 years before he's eligible for parole. This is a guy that I think is in his mid to late 40s. So he's not going to get out until he's almost on the cusp of 60, if not on the other end of 60. And what we haven't talked about, and what we're not talking about at this point, is the federal charges that are likely coming against him. And what's going to happen with the co-defendants, the 3 former officers. So there's a lot of dynamics here. I'm not going to say, it was too harsh, it was too light. I just want to give this sentence some perspective as to what he would have gotten if this was California, with no weapon being used, officer or not. It's a straight 15 to life sentence. And then it'll be up to whether or not the parole board would release him at 12, 13 years, or whether he'd have to re-up for parole and spend more time in prison all the way up to the rest of his life. So hope this video has been helpful, giving the Chauvin sentence a little context. Obviously, there was no sentence that was going to bring George Floyd back, bring back a life, bring back a brother, bring back a father, a boyfriend, a son. It was a tragedy no matter which way you look at it, no matter how the sentence came down. But I hope this video gave a little perspective on what the sentence really means, what the judge's options are, and how the judge came to that conclusion. So if you have any questions about anything related to sentencing, particularly in the state of California, which is where I'm at, where my firm is at, David Shapiro, San Diego-based criminal defense lawyer, you can always give my firm a call, 619-295-3555.